You weren't invited to the meeting when you're head of the board. Ousted ex-board of police Diane Deans, questioned by Freedom lawyer Brendan Miller. The convoy is what led to her demise. Here's the clip.
My name is Brendan Miller. I'm counsel for Freedom Corp, which is an organization that was incorporated to represent the protesters who were in your city in January and February of 2022. First off, though I am not from here, thank you for your service as the police commissioner, or we call it the police commissioner back home. Thank you very much. I just want to start off, of course, we didn't get the recording until this morning. In that recording of your conversation with Mayor Watson, you said you had been contacted by someone within OPS who had been called off under the interim chiefship that was then in place of Steve Bell. Can you kind of explain that for me?
Yeah. A senior officer inside police had phoned and shared his version of events with me, sort of just informing me from his perspective what was happening. He said that the day of that particular planned event, that the incident commander was changed that day, and that there was some internal disagreement, and it led to the end of that particular operation.
Okay, and so I'm just going to have to ask you to clarify what is the event and what is the operation you speak of?
It was to a planned takeout of the intersection of Sussex and Rideau.
Okay, so the plan that got canceled so that my clients could move on, and then, oh, well, that confirms what I was looking for. Thank you. Did you know about the tripartite meetings that the mayor was having with federal government elected officials on February 7th, 8th, and 10th of 2022 at the time?
No.
He didn't tell you about that?
No.
Okay, and so obviously you weren't invited.
I was not invited, no.
Right, and of course that meeting was about police resources.
Yes.
Right, and you're the chair of what you'll call the commission, the Ottawa Police Service Board.
Correct.
And so you run that board that decides how to dole out resources to the police, right?
Right.
Okay. And did you know that on January 30th, 2022, Chief Slawley had asked the city, and the city somewhat agreed to get an injunction? Were you aware of that?
On what date?
January 30th, 2022.
It's all a little foggy. There was definitely discussions about injunctions that didn't move forward. I don't think I can confirm for you exactly the dates.
Okay. The injunctions that you did discuss, did you ever discuss that the terms of that injunction would be to both remove the trucks and get the honking to stop? Is that fair?
I don't think I had that level of detail, no.
Okay. Did Chief Slawley ever tell you in any of your conversations that on January 31st, 2022, RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki told him not to get the injunction because it would be an official movement to another stage, that it would involve the whole country, and that anything official will spark a national response? Did he ever say that to you?
Not to the best of my recollection.
I'll ask him and Commissioner Lucki then. So you did not know that, but you did know that the Federal Police Service, the RCMP, had been involved in the matter in dealing with the protesters?
Yes.
Okay. And to your knowledge, after January 31st, 2022, did Chief Slawley ever advise to get an injunction still after that point?
There were, I believe, I mean, the timeline's just a little bit all meshed together in my mind, but I believe there were still ongoing discussions.
Okay. And to your knowledge, I just want to make this clear, because I know that you were in sort of a vacuum. So, but you did know that from January 25th to February 14th, 22, that there were multiple police services involved in dealing with this matter?
Yes.
Right. And that included the Ottawa Police Service, the Ontario Provincial Police, and the RCMP?
Yes.
Among
And
others that you
among
subcontract.
others, yes.
Right. And I take it that you know as well, at the federal level and the provincial level, it's not politicians that decide where to execute or carry out and apply police resources with respect to events and investigations, but it's the police agency itself because they're independent. Right. And to my knowledge as well, and I wanted to put this to you, is there any prohibition on yourself or members of the Ottawa Police Service Board of Council contacting someone like Commissioner Lucky or the Commissioner of the OPP to have a discussion about resources?
I don't believe there's any prohibition doing that. I think the protocol, though, would be that politicians speak to politicians and police officers speak to police.
Right, but is it true with the commission that you do invite sworn members of police agencies like the OPP and the RCMP to meet with the Ottawa Police Service Board at times, and you have in this case too, I believe?
Yeah.
Right, so is it fair to say that there was nothing stopping the Ottawa Police Service Board from asking for any of the commissioners from the OPP or the RCMP to come before them in order to have a conversation about resources?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Okay. Can I ask, just, and I'm not trying to poke, but why wasn't that done?
Yeah, I've been asking myself that question too. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if I were doing it again, would I do that? Probably yes. But at the time, we were receiving information through the channel of the police service, and that was our primary source of information. Okay.
And you'd already discussed the company Navigator a little bit, and it was in the news, and I know they contacted you. When was Navigator retained for the Ottawa Police Service? Do you remember?
Months and months previous to this event. I mean, the board had given a direction to the police service to amp up the communications function because we felt that it was quite inadequate. But they came back to the board with, I mean, I'm not going to get this entirely right, but the sentiment was, we don't have time to amp up because we don't have enough people to do that. So we just need to hire some help for now. And they wanted to hire Navigator because they had some relationship with Navigator. And so they chose, I know they're a crisis communications firm, but they were also providing regular communications advice to Ottawa Police.
Okay, because how it seemed to have been spun in the media is that they were hired specifically due to Chief Slawley not being able to deal with this.
Yeah, no, that was not the case.
That was done way in advance.
Way in advance.
Okay, that's good. I just wanted to know that. And then I understand that when the retainer did happen, and it's good to know it was that far away, if what I'm about to ask you is correct. I understand the retainer with Navigator was $75,000 on a fee-for-service basis, but it was maybe not paid up front, but it was a $75,000 cap, which is usually less than what their normal retainer of $100,000 is. Is that about accurate?
I don't know if I actually knew what the details of that retainer were.
Okay. Now, I also understand the Ottawa Police Service had retained the assistance from a company called Advanced Symbolic Inc., also known as ASI.
Yes.
Are you aware of them? When was ASI retained?
Certainly in advance of this occasion. Chief Slawley had brought a representative from ASI to the board basically to talk about the benefits of ASI, and he felt that there was that their services could be useful.
Okay. And what was ASI doing for the Ottawa Police Service exactly? Could you explain that? I have an understanding, but I'd like you to explain it.
I'd like Chief Slawley to explain it, if you don't mind, because I mean, I think my very, very limited understanding of ASI is that it basically searches many, many, many sites and sort of pulls out keywords to create an impression of public opinion, if you will.
Right. Would it be fair to say when the ASI was discussed with you, did they refer to the phrase data analytics?
Probably, yes.
Okay. So they get all this stuff and then they give you in a report or to Chief Slully the public perception of what's going on so that Chief Slully and his team know how to react, right?
I think generally speaking, that's correct.
Okay. Now, I want to take you to one part, and I'm wondering if you're aware of this, and it's come up in some of the production. Do you remember when it was announced, I believe the Ottawa Police Services had mentioned that they had been in touch with Provincial Child and Family Services about apprehending children in the protest? Do you remember that?
Vaguely.
Were you aware that it was Navigator who told them to do that?
No.
Thank you. Now, I just want to get into sort of your, what you had said. You stated that you had an intention to work together and put aside political differences, and it's good to hear that, and I'm sure the public is happy to hear that as well. I'm just going to have to ask you, can you tell me about your relationship between yourself and Mayor Watson?
I don't know what there is to tell. I have worked with Mayor Watson for a very long time. We have worked on many files together over the years. I think I enjoyed more confidence in the mayor until relatively recently, until this term of council, when I detected just perhaps a change in Mayor Watson's general approach, and it goes far beyond me. He had, for whatever reason, at the start of this term, decided to build more of a coalition approach to governing than he had in the past. And I wasn't part of that coalition, so I suppose in some ways became a bit more of an outsider than I had been before. But when I had worked with him on Transit Commission, for example, we were landing a Presto card that didn't work. We worked very well together.
Okay. Could you agree with me that the tension also started when you decided to, you announced, at least to him, maybe privately or maybe publicly, that you intended to bring a motion to fund litigation as against Bill C-21? Do you remember that?
Well, I don't think that's when it started. That was just one of many, many, many disagreements politically we had. And listen, I don't think there's anything wrong with political disagreements. I think it's actually quite healthy for our democracy. So we don't have to agree on every issue. I think the issue is when it becomes personal.
Okay. And so moving on to the issue with the hiring of the interim chief, you heard yesterday, and in the recording we heard, that Mayor Watson claimed that he had concerns about your and your council's appointment of the proposed new interim chief, Matthew Torgan, because there was not enough consultation with stakeholders, right?
Right.
Before Steve Bell became the interim chief, how much consultation was there?
You mean at the very end when he...
Right at the beginning. So when Steve Bell took over as interim chief, how much consultation did Mayor Watson do?
I don't think he did any.
Right. So it's fair to say that the issue that Mayor Watson took with your council or your board appointing a chief on the basis that there was no consultation, it's fair to say he went about it and did no consultation and had his own appointed. Would you say that?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, I just wanted to cover one point, and I believe it was covered, but just not with the specific association, because there's two police unions, correct? There's the one for senior officers and then the
Correct.
other one. I also understand your evidence that it was also the Ottawa Police Senior Officers Association, which is those with ranks of inspector and higher, who also did not want Slully as their first choice for mayor or for, for chief back in 2019. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't think I really knew that until, sometime after he was hired.
Okay. And with respect to Chief Slawley's relationship, in your statement, you specifically mentioned he had issues with the relationship with the Community Health Resource Center. Can you elaborate on what that was?
Yeah, it was just an observation that I had made through the budget process in the setting of the 2022 budget. The Ottawa Community Health and Resource Centers came forward with a proposal really for some alternative service delivery in terms of addressing mental health calls and addictions calls and housing crisis calls. And there was a lot of tension through the budget process between those organizations that I observed.
Okay, and was that organization, the Community Health and Resource Centers, I take it if there was issues in the budget, it had to do with tension between funding that the Ontario Police Service was getting versus funding they were not, or et cetera? Is that what it was?
Ontario Police Service?
Oh, sorry, Ottawa Police Service. So the Ottawa Police Service is getting a lot higher funding, I take it. They wanted more funding, and was that the tension?
No, I don't think it was that. I think it was that there's a growing perspective in our community that police are responding to calls for crisis situations like someone experiencing homelessness or someone having an addictions crisis or mental health crisis, and that isn't always the right response. And there are growing cries in the community to set up a new system where if you called 911, you might be calling for a paramedic, you might be calling for fire, you might be calling for police, or you might be calling for a mental health worker. And so I think there are a lot of voices in the community, including community health and resource centers, that would like to see, at least an opportunity where, if you might be dispatching more than one, you might dispatch fire and police and a mental health worker. But right now, police are the responders because they take up that space, not because they're necessarily trained in crisis response of that nature, or not because they're necessarily the best response. And so I think there was some tension between Chief Slawley and the community that would like to see a change in, some modest change in police response to those types of calls.
That was very detailed. Has anyone ever told you maybe you should be the chair of the police board?
Not recently.
Yes. So my last question is this. Is it fair to say that one of the biggest contentions with respect to getting information from Chief Slawley wasn't so much just with the information based on everyone's public statements within your council? What they wanted to know is, can you give us a date when the protest will end? And can you give us a date if it's not going to end, how you're going to remove them? Is that fair? That's really what you wanted to know. That's what your constituents were bugging you about in all the emails.
I mean, in broad strokes, I think that's fair.
Right. And Chief Slawley, and to no fault of his own, and he couldn't tell you that because he didn't even know.
No, and if those resources hadn't arrived, or perhaps if we hadn't had extra tools like the Emergencyact, they might still be here.
Well, and I understand the extra tools, and I guess we can argue about that. But
sure.
Would you agree with me that if there was a like order to the Emergencyact to remove the protesters, et cetera, as long as you had the resources that, based on your knowledge as a former chair of the police service board, the police could have removed these protesters simply with a court order on the same terms. Is that fair?
I don't know if that's fair. I don't think that I'm the person to assess that.
Thank you. I'll make the pitch to him instead. Thank you very much.